Okay guys, hi, this is Floyd again. Another 3ds Max tutorial, my second. I had some people ask me to do a second one, so I'll continue to do it until enough people ask me to stop. I apologize for the dogs barking in the last one. I got a couple of comments about that. It's out of my control. But if you watched my first tutorial, pardon me, you'll remember that all we really did, aside from a lot of talking and a bit of introduction of the interface here, the four views that by default 3ds Max gives us, that we created a teapot. And we simply did that by going to the teapot button over here on the right hand side of the screen, in the create menu, in the geometry tabs or menu if you will. We clicked on teapot. We came over into this top viewport and we simply clicked once and we dragged to create the 3ds Max signature teapot. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to go down here again to the sort of almost the bottom right hand corner of the screen, really the penultimate icon here, the one just above the one in the bottom corner. And we're going to click that. It's called Zoom Extents All when you drag the mouse over it. That's the tooltip that shows up. And what it does is sort of makes whatever you're looking at, however many objects there are, sort of come into the maximum view in all the viewports. The one just to the left makes it come into maximum view only in the active viewport, the one you're working in. So here we go, and again, you might remember this orbit button down here. That's for this, mostly for this perspective viewport here. We can kind of tool around and see what we're doing. Now, what you might remember, I'm going to simply right-click into this front viewport and make it active a minute. And then I'm going back to this panel, and I'm going to go to the Modify button. I can actually modify these things when I create the object. I just created the teapot, so its parameters are right here, and I can change them now, or later I can simply select the teapot and go back to the little curved cylinder, back to the Modify button, and change the parameters then. And the parameter that I'm going to change right now, just to make things a little more realistic, is the segments. And if you'll look in this front viewport while I'm doing this, I'll actually go ahead and make it big, so you can see better that as I increase the segments, I'm getting a better looking teapot. I'm going to go up just to 8. That won't be too, won't give it too much geometry to render, and yet it'll make it realistic looking. And if I go to this render button, which I showed you in the last lesson, and render out a snapshot of the scene, there's a pretty good looking teapot. Mostly curved lines, a little bit of straight line action going on here, but you won't. I don't think we'll really notice that as we're building this little scene that we're going to build. I'm going to go back down here and go back to this very far button on the bottom right and click it. That'll bring up the 4 viewports. Again, there are shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts to do all this, but keep in mind that, one, I don't know them all because I'm just not a keyboard shortcut kind of person, and the second issue is I'm on a Mac. So a lot of things don't act the same on a Mac. I'm 2-finger scrolling here. You would use on a Windows PC, you would use your scroll button to make things bigger, appear bigger and smaller. You're not really changing the size of the object. You're just changing the distance from which you're observing it, if that's helpful. So let's go into this. Let's click into this top viewport because it's convenient to work in. For some reasons which may not be apparent now, but as you start creating things in other viewports, you will see why. That in this case, the top viewport is very convenient. I'm going to use my 2-finger scroll here to kind of scroll out a little bit to simply fly higher above the teapot, if you will. So I have a little real estate here to work with because I'm going to put a surface beneath the teapot, and I'm going back to the create geometry, and I'm going to choose plane. And right now, before I even create it, I'm going to up the segments to about 6 each way. 6 vertical, 6 horizontal, if you want to look at it like that, because it makes it take textures and such better. In the rendering, it renders better. I'm going back to the top viewport, and I'm going to drag and click and drag, and I'm just going to drag out a surface beneath this teapot. And because I'm doing it in the front viewport, it's going to do it at the origin and put it directly beneath the teapot, and I don't have to worry about moving things around. If I click into this perspective viewport and hit the orbit button, now I can kind of orbit around, and I can see that the teapot is sitting right on the surface. And if I go ahead and render this, well, it's very nice. It's a pretty realistic teapot sitting on a kind of a nondescript surface, but we're gonna change that so that it looks a little more real. Now, I'm not worried about units and all that right now. I don't care whether this teapot is 40 inches tall or 10 centimeters tall. For our purposes here, it really makes no difference. We're just looking at making a basic scene. So I can, of course, zoom out in this viewport using the 2-finger scroll. There we go. I can come in and out in 3D modeling, and I presume in animation too. You know, part of the secret is that we only show people what we want them to see. For instance, if I zoom out on this scene right now and render it, what you're going to see is a pink teapot sitting on a green 2-dimensional plane, sort of just sitting out in black space. And I can change the color of the space. That's very easy in 3ds Max. I could put a picture back there. But when we look at something, I think we assume, well, there's a teapot sitting on a surface, maybe a cutting board or a counter in a kitchen, in a house, in a neighborhood, in a city, in a state, in the world. But we don't have to show people all these things. That would increase the amount of work that we do tremendously. So we're just going to show them a small area. And I'm going to zoom in on this again. Pardon the cough. I don't have a cough button. How are we going to make this more realistic looking? Well, one, we're going to work on the teapot. So right-click, if you will, and then click on the teapot and select it. Now, come back here to this Modify button, and you're going to see, when you click on the teapot, it's called Teapot 01, and for my purposes, that's okay right now. Let's name the plane, too. So click on the plane and come up to the Modify panel, and it's called Plane 01. Well, let's call it, you can click into there and change the name. Let's call it Table. Now, this may seem unnecessary right now because I've only got 2 objects in the scene, but what if I had 100 and I wanted to select one? Well, I can come up here to a Select button, or I can come to this Select by Name, and if I open this little dialog right here, it lists what's in the scene, and if I want to select the teapot, I can just click on that and click OK. Saves me having to try to click in here and get around objects or you know, things get in the way and get accidentally clicked. So I've selected the teapot. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to this top bar, which is in brown right here because I like it in brown. And you're going to drag your mouse until you find the material editor. It may be 4 globes up here on one little tab, or it may look like this one that I'm showing you, but when the tooltip that will pop up will say Material Editor, and we're going to click that. That's going to open this the Material Editor. And by default, it's going to show you 6 material slots. You can right-click on any of these slots and increase the number. There, I want to right-click, increase to 24 sample slots. Well, that's a lot of materials. For this, I'm just going to keep it on 3 by 2 or 6. And we're going to think about the teapot for a moment. Well, we're going to put a material in this first square that's going to make this teapot look better. Right now it's just a sort of a generic gray, and that's the way that's the default. Well, how do I get this material onto this teapot? Well, there's a button right there that says Assign Material to Selection. I can do that. Just hit it, and it will assign whatever material to whatever is selected over here. I can also just grab the material and drag it to the teapot. Okay, I'll do that right now. Boom. There we go. Now, if I change things, for instance, if I come down here to this diffuse, which is really the color of something, and I change the color to sort of a lime green, you saw it update in the viewport. Let's render it and see. Now I've got a lime green. It looks kind of cute, but no more realistic really than it did in the beginning. In order to make this look realistic, I'm thinking the teapot should be something like a copper color. So I'm going to go into this diffuse box again, and I'm going to click in the color box part of it, not on this little button to the right. And I'm going to choose something in a red, yellow, that's maybe kind of copper colored. I don't know, a little more red maybe, something like that. And you saw it update here in the viewport. Render it again. It's kind of copper colored, but it's really, the scene doesn't look any more real than it did before. But look down below these three color boxes and you'll see something that says specular level, glossiness, soften. Forget about soften right now, but specular level, if you will, is how sharp light reflects on something in layman's terms. On the side of an orange, the light is pretty spread out, but on the side of a chrome ball, light will reflect as a small dot maybe, and giving it a more glossy look. So the specular level needs to go up. The glossiness is what it is. It's the shininess. So we're going to raise the specular level just for purposes here to about 85. You're going to have to experiment around with this. The glossiness we're going to raise up to about 50. Now just trust me on this a minute. This is going to make. Now, render the scene again. Come down to this viewport, click or right-click in it. Hit the render button. Well, maybe it could be something made out of porcelain right now, but it certainly doesn't look like brass. Well, why not? Well, brass, we might think the brass is shiny. It may reflect things around it. And it may have a sort of a metallic look to it. Well, go back up to right above these three color boxes, and you'll see the word blend, which is a type of shader named after Mr. Blend, Dr. Blend, whatever. There are others, anisotropic. They all have Fong, Strauss, translucent shader. Let's choose metal, since what we're working for is metal. And you saw in the sample, you don't see this effect in the viewport, but you did here on the sample, which I can double click and make a little bigger. Kind of gave it a metallic look, not very shiny metallic look, but a metallic look. And if I render the scene, well, now it's sort of dark, but it renders pretty well, pretty metallic looking. Now, what else about metal? Well, metal reflects. So we're going to make this material reflect. We're going to give it a ray trace reflection, which means it's going to, again in layman's terms, it's going to reflect what's in the scene around it. In this case, the surface or the plane beneath it. We're going to drop down now, come down below these specular and glossiness things, past extended parameters, past super sampling, down to maps, and hit maps, and expand that rollout. In that rollout, you'll see something that says reflection. Click reflection. And we don't want it too shiny. We don't want it terribly shiny. Let's drop this reflection down to about 40. And let's try that. Oh, nothing happened. It's not reflecting. Why not? It doesn't know how to reflect yet. So we're going to hit on this map where it says none. You're going to click on that. And you're going to go and choose Ray Trace from out of this list. Now, that's also going to take you into these ray tracing parameters. It takes you away from this parent material it takes you to a panel that controls the ray trace effect. And I always click by this black. I get better results most times. How do we get back to the material if we wanted to change the color, because all that's gone? Well, there's a button here that says go to parent. We're going to hit go to parent. Now we're back to the original material. I can't adjust the ray trace qualities from here, but I can adjust the basic material parameters. The other thing I want to do is click two-sided, because because for a three-dimensional object, obviously, it is shaded on both sides, and this helps you like not see through this model at some point where it might look a little fake. Well, let's go back and render this now and see what effect that's had. Well, that's quite a difference. Now the coffee pot is kind of shiny looking, not too shiny. We didn't make it too shiny. It's somewhat reflective of the surface beneath it, even though right now it's just a sort of a green generic surface. It's not bad looking. Really, the scene isn't bad looking. It's missing some lighting. We're using default lighting right now. We're going to change that very simply. But first of all, let's take care of this plane. Let's go into the second material box here for a second. Now we're going to use a texture map rather than just a color. I'm not interested in just changing the color of the plane. I want to go into this diffuse, which is really the color. Again, it's a color of something. I'm going to click this little button. It opens the material map browser. I'm going to bitmap. Now it's a little different on a PC, but it's generally I've got it set up pretty much the same. You navigate to your local disk, to your program files, to Autodesk, to 3ds Max 2010, and to Maps. Now, you'll only have to do this once per session. From now on, it'll navigate here automatically, and you see a lot of different material categories listed. I think for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to hit wood. Just double-click the wood and click the thumbnail so we can look at it as what it is we're using. Well, I don't know. It's our choice. I kind of like the old wood. Maybe it's sitting on a cutting board, so we'll hit open. Now you'll see the wood in the preview in the material editor. How do I get the wood onto the plane? Well, again, I can hit the button assigned to it, or I can just drag it. Let's drag it over. Oh, it turned gray. Well, I can't see the wood. Well, there's another little button right here. It says Show Standard Map and Viewport, and when I click that, watch what happens. Well, there's the wood. Let's render the scene and see what it looks like. Really, it's not bad. The wood seems fine. I'm going to bringing it a little closer. There we go. I don't have any real problem with this. By the way, there's a little hand tool here, a move tool. You can move things around here, particularly in that view, but in any viewport. Render again. Now, what you're noticing is we're rendering at about, whatever this is, 640 by 420 or something. It's kind of a square render. If I wanted to render more like the shape of the viewport here, I could simply go to Render Setup, which is the first of the little teapots up here, and go to Output Size, and maybe hit HDTV. And we'll set it at something not too high, like 1280 by 720. Let's render it out. Okay, well, there it goes. Really big, really nice. You can see a lot of detail, and you can see that the detail is pretty good. I'm going to do one other thing with this wood material. We're going to go back to the parent again. I showed you this button. Back to the parent wood material. And we're going to go down here to Maps. Now there's something called bump mapping. And bump mapping gives a material a sort of a three-dimensional texture. So what is the bump map going to be? Well, in this case, we want the wood to be kind of contoured. Wood isn't just flat like porcelain. So we're going to just take this map, this old wood JPG map, and just drag it down to this bump. And we'll hit instance, meaning if I change one, I change the other. Okay, 30 should be fine. Let's render the scene again, and the difference is going to be subtle here, but it does make a difference, especially where reflections are involved. Now, I'm liking this wood okay, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you how to change the mapping on this. Go to where we loaded it and hit that, the M, and you'll see this tiling. Well, here you can move things around. I can move it I can move it this way, can move it this way, rotate it. I can increase the tiling. You can see what's happening. More pieces of wood are showing. It looks small. I like this, the way it is now. And of course, since I instanced the bump map, that will change too. Yeah, let's look at it now. Ah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay, one more thing I'm going to do, just for fun, is I'm going to put a little reflection on this wood, and you'll see sort of the effect of the bump mapping. I'm going to go to Parent, go back to the original material, go to Maps. I'm going to go to Reflection. I'm going to turn it way down for this. I'm going to turn it down to maybe, I don't know, 19 or 20, 18, 15. Again, I'm going to use Ray Trace, though, because I want it to reflect the pot and anything else that's in the scene. Now, render it out. It may be hard for you to see at home, but what's happening is the wood countertop maybe is a little shiny, and it's reflecting the teapot a little bit. You can see it over here. Not much. I could turn it up a little bit. I could turn it up by going back to this map, maybe turn it up to, I don't know, 25, 27, something. You have to play around with a lot of these values. Some of it's intuitive, some of it's experiential. Well, there it is, and now you can see it reflected in there, and that's fine. Now, the scene actually doesn't look that bad, but what doesn't look real is the lighting just seems artificial. It just doesn't seem right. It's lighting everything from every side, which is not how lights work generally. We're going to put a light in this scene, and in order to do that, where are we going to put it in? Well, let's go to this left viewport. You can put it in any viewport, really, and then move it around. Very nice about Macs. But let's zoom out in this left viewport a little bit. We can see the plane here. We can see the teapot sitting on it. I'm going to zoom out even a little more. And I'm going to go up here to my Create panel and go to the third button beneath it, and that says Lights. Now, it defaults, in these later versions of Macs, it defaults to photometric. I'm just going to go for a standard light right now. And we're going to use a target spot. We're going to aim it right at the teapot. So I'm going to click up here, somewhere above the teapot on Y-axis, and I'm going to drag it out and drag the target to the teapot. Okay. Now, I'm going to right-click on this light and hit Cast Shadows. Well, let's not do that first. Let's do it without doing that. Let's take off Cast Shadows, go to the perspective, and render it out. Well, not really much of a difference in terms of how real the scene looks. Well, now we're going to right-click it and hit Cast Shadows. Come back here, render it out. And there are many different kinds of shadows. This is only one. This is an area shadow. But you see it works very well, and it looks really pretty real. Pretty real. We're pretty much done with this. The only thing that I would do here, as I said, we need to show people only what we want to show them. So I'm going to select this light, and I could have done that from up here, you remember. Select by name, spot 01. Okay, it's selected. I'm going to go to its modify. Come over here to modify the little bent cylinder, and I'm going to change at least one of the parameters of it. I'm going to drop down to spotlight parameters, and you see these circles here from on the top viewport. In fact, I'll take it off a wireframe, and put it on smooth by highlights, so you can really see what's happening. Let me select that light again. Sorry. Got distracted. I'm going to draw in the hot spot on that light so that it's really just on the teapot itself. Maybe even just kind of the center of the teapot. Very, very tight. Very tight. Now I'm going to draw in the fall off field on that light. I'm just going to draw this back, and you can see in this top viewport what's happening. It's only eliminating part of the cutting board now. Okay, all right. come down here and render this scene. And what has this done? Well, it's sort of taken away the need to put something behind this. It is a scene in and of itself, which is fine. I think looks very good. You know, for maybe a first effort. Looks kind of real. And I don't have to worry about putting in a background, like a kitchen behind it. Why? Because people can't see that anyway. It's not illuminated. Only thing that's illuminated is what I want people to see, which is this. If I wanted some other objects in there, I would have to change the lighting and illuminate more. But I think you can see this does a very, very nice job. And we've only shown people what we want them to see, and we've saved ourselves a lot of work. We didn't have to build a kitchen behind it. We didn't have to go find a picture of a kitchen to put behind it, which we could have done very easily. Making it look like it fits into that kitchen is quite another matter, and that's for another lesson. But now we've created our first sort of, if you will, almost photorealistic scene in 3ds Max without really much effort, without too many clicks, and 3ds Max has done a lot of the work for us. So we're going to call this tutorial it right now, and I think in the next tutorial we're going to look a little more at materials and lighting, different options for that, and then we'll get into a little animation. Anyway, this is Floyd. I'm signing off. Let me know how you feel about this. Visit my web, visit my page if you will, and give me some likes if you like it, and some not likes if you don't. Anyway, have a good day.